you all please to watch that now, and I will pause the recording, resume the recording. So that video is a lovely kind of overview. Josie, did that help? Yes, excellent. Okay, so I'm just going to reshare my screen again. This is, if you like, a little kind of chart that maps out what that teacher was talking about. So she was talking about understanding the nature of the behaviour itself, when it happens, where it happens, who's involved, which leads to a better understanding of the issue itself, why it's happening, and what we call the function, what purpose that behaviour is serving, which then leads to trialling a better understanding of how to intervene in a really purposeful and targeted way, so that you can then analyse whether that worked based on the initial data collection. So I'd like you to do a bit of an activity now. So I'd like you to think about a student or an individual who has presented with some challenging behaviours in the context in which you work. I've created a Padlet here. I'll copy the link into the chat box. Copy. And what I'd like you to do is type in as much information about this student as you can. Some of their strengths and challenges. You can just do this in bullet point form. And I want you to share that on the Padlet. And I've created a Padlet where you can then draw little arrows, and I'd like you to read somebody else's student profile and offer some PBS type solutions. So here is the Padlet. And if we go there, it looks like this. So you can put up a student profile. You just type, press the plus button and you type in about the student profile, and then someone else can add a response. And you might say, why don't you, I think that a great practice to try here might be X or Y. And what you can then do, can you see how after I've written that, I can add connect to a post, and I can connect it to that post, and it's got a little arrow, okay? So what I'd really like you all doing now is adding in there a student from your own context and at least one PBS strategy that you recommend somebody else try with a particular student. So I won't bother putting you in breakout rooms. You can do this as a whole group. I'll give you a few minutes to add yours there.
Where do we link?
Remember, when you're talking about these students, add in what the nature of the challenging behaviour is. I might put in these instructions in the Padlet.
Sorry, Kate, are we looking at tier 1 strategies that would?
Tier 1, absolutely.
Okay, cool.
Good question. Thanks, Oscar. Okay, we've got some great descriptions of students up here. You've all done a great job making sure that they didn't identify anyone. Can I ask you now to start connecting to each other's, responding, providing one recommendation to each other? Some funky little arrows starting to appear. I only just discovered how to do this in Padlet today, so I'm pleased to see it's working. Okay, I'll get you to finish up. I'll give you another moment and then we'll quickly go on with some more before we finish up for the evening. Some great suggestions here. Some good recommendations about choice, providing students alternatives and choices in where they sit and how they respond. All right. Let's briefly go back to the PowerPoint. So when we talk about responding using a PBS model to challenging behaviours, it involves a number of concurrent ideas. One of them is that we're preventing these behaviours from occurring, how we set up the classroom, the kind of boundaries we put in place, the procedures and protocols that we put in place, and paying positive attention to all students are some great examples. Another is what the role of teaching expectations, teaching procedures and rules, teaching appropriate behaviours, and providing universally designed ways for students to engage. We're also using consequences in relation to responding to particular behaviours. They can be very low level, simply standing near a student, briefly correcting them as soon as the behaviours occurred, and so on. And also finally reinforcing, using that 4:1 ratio, offering students choice and decision making and agency, and not attending to challenging behaviours to see if simply they can be extinguished that way. By doing this, we are, of course, reminding ourselves that we are encouraging our students to articulate their support needs, we're reducing classroom conflict, and we're building relationships in the classroom in ways that are very nurturing. Teachers who do these things have a powerful positive influence on reducing the avoidance of school, improving student self-regulation, and enriching the kind of cooperative climate within a classroom, which we know is key element of PBS. It also needs to be reflected in the kind of the way we teach, so that we are motivating our students. We're fostering their ability to collaborate with others. I'm going to skip to this final activity here because I want to show you something that may assist you all in providing PBS style responses. So let's quickly read through this case study here. There's a student who has some challenging behaviours in place. The student often gets up out of their seat. It might be under a pretext like throwing rubbish in the bin, picking up a book, but on the way back to the seat, this student jostles and disturbs other students and creates a kind of ripple effect. Sometimes she'll pause at other students' desks and engage in conversations that are off topic. And when you attempt to correct this student, they become argumentative, and this impacts poorly on how your lesson runs. You've tried having conversations, but the student is resistant. These problematic behaviours tend to occur in the morning between 9 and 11 before recess. And it usually occurs when there is some structured or independent work going on, when the class has been assigned a task. The behaviour tends to occur more frequently during maths, but it's now starting to spread and other students are becoming involved. So with this case study in mind, I would like you to now access this link here. It provides you with some tier 1 strategies. Now, there are some of you in this room who are already engaging in PBS, and you may have your own excellent ideas for some PBS strategies. But I've put this website up, which looks like this. Have any of you seen this before? It's pbisworld.com, and it's got tabs for each of the tiers, but it's got some really excellent ideas for tier 1 practices that teachers can be using in the classroom. Josie, when you said before, what does it look like? These are many of the key evidence-based practices.
Thank you.
My pleasure. So if you are considering this case study here, I'm going to put you into pairs for a couple of minutes, and I'd like you to explain to each other which practices that you would use to respond to this student.
Okay, if you're applying these strategies to one, like if they're specialised to this one student, doesn't that actually mean it's like more the tier 2 or tier 3?
Oh, that's such a great question. I'd love to answer it, but I'm going to give someone else a go.
Okay.
Someone else like to have a go?
I think, Kate, probably what you're expecting from this task is that we think from a universal perspective, how you might be able to reduce that behaviour in a single student, but addressing the whole class.
Absolutely. Did you hear that? That was a bit quiet.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Could you hear that?
So was it, we're trying to find strategies that you'd actually use across the whole, like you could use with everyone?
Yep. So if we take Shawnee's example before, some students were fighting at the end of lunchtime, but a universal practice was to change the length of lunchtime. So they didn't shorten it for the people who were being violent. They simply removed the kind of empty space at the end of lunchtime that was creating the opportunity for this to occur. So at tier 1, you'll be doing these kinds of things that are available to all students. Okay, so the 4:1 ratio is likely to be critical for some students, but certainly not harmful to anybody else if it's going on in the room. Does that make sense?
And Josie, I suppose you can assume that that sort of behaviour is highly likely to occur in any number of students. It's not super specific. Lots of kids ramble about and delay and get attention from their peers. Yeah. So anything you apply universally to the whole classroom is going to benefit.
I'll see if I can give you a bit of an example. My daughter started high school this year, and the school put in place during term 1 a kind of social skills program that ran in health lessons for the majority of term 1. And they did a whole lot of stuff about being able to name their feelings and being able to relax and just do some of that nice stuff. But they also had to work in groups and do some pair work. Now, and my daughter kept coming home and saying, I know all this stuff. And I said, great, what a fantastic opportunity to rehearse it. There'll be some kids in your class who really need this. Do you know what I mean? So she couldn't work out why she was doing it if she already knew it. And so we had a conversation about how practicing these skills makes them even better, and, you know, how she hasn't come home and talked to me about this before. So it's great to hear that she does know it. And you know what I mean? It was harmful. It wasn't harmful to her. It was critical for some students. All right, I'm going to quickly put you in some breakout rooms. I'd like you talking about what you would do with as a universal practice in a classroom if you had a student like this, and you've got that tier 1 PBIS worlding to draw on if you need to. I'll drop in and see how you're going. Oh, Stephanie, you haven't been assigned to a room. Hang on.
No.
Oh, you should have received an invitation. You should be in breakout room 1.
Where would that invitation come from?
I don't know, but I can see you're meant to be in breakout room 1.
I don't know. There's something here that I can see.
I'm going to attempt to move you to a different room and then move you back and see if something comes up for you.
Okay.
Can you see anything in front of you?
No.
I don't know how to force you in there. You should be taken in there. All right, well, I'm going to, hang on. Hi, Oscar. Stephanie can't work out how to join the room. I've assigned her to your room. What appears from your end when you go there?
Or it just says, Kate wants to put you in breakout room 1, and then it asks me if I want to go there.
Okay, she's not seeing that. Oscar, what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you to leave. Do you have the option to leave the room? Because I don't know how to get.
I can leave it.
Okay. Oscar's going to join us back here and see if he can talk to you here. Here he is. So can I get the two of you to have this conversation together here?
Sure, not a problem. All right, what was the...
You want me to share the screen with the issue again?
That would be awesome, thank you. All right. Hi, Stephanie.
Hello.
So based on the times that she's presenting these behaviors...
Yeah, so in the morning.
In the mornings, could it have something to do with her home life?
Maybe, yeah. Like she's just coming from home and she's got to settle in a bit.
Yeah, exactly. So let's have a look if there's anything.
It says that she's a bit, does it say she's fidgety or something? Let me check.
Yeah, she often gets up.
Maybe she needs frequent breaks. I know that's what it says as a thing, like have student take frequent breaks.
Mm-hmm.
So
I'm
maybe
just going to bring up the PBIS world thing, see if there's anything that jumps out here.
All good. I'm also thinking if she gets up during independent work, is it because she
can't do
doesn't
it?
understand it? Would it be a level too high for her?
Yeah, maybe. Like especially if they said math, so maybe she struggles a bit with mathematics.
Yeah. So whether she struggles with the content or whether the way the instructions are delivered. So an intervention for the entire class as a tier 1 could be providing multimodal instructions.
Yeah.
Also maybe just a seating plan that she sits next to someone who's hardworking and would be motivating to her.
Yeah, that can like help her if she is struggling. She can just ask them, like someone she feels safe with to ask questions.
Yeah, exactly.
They sound great. Well done, folks.
Thank
I'm
you.
going to bring everyone else back because it's getting late and we started the meeting late, so I don't want to hold everyone up. I'm sure everyone's got dinner and
We're getting hungry.
Stephanie, Oscar said when I created the online the meeting room, you should see something come up that says that I want you to join a meeting room.
Yeah, nothing came up on my screen.
Hmm.
That's okay.
Oh, hey.
How did we all go? Did anybody have any great ideas for what they put in place as a universal tier 1 practice in this classroom?
Well, I think one of the things that Mary and I talked about, because we're both studying the same course, is, and it wasn't actually on the screen, is working out whether there was an underlying health issue or home concern prior to the behaviour taking place. So we were sort of saying that one of the first things you should be ruling out when you're investigating these things is if there are things happening outside the classroom or things happening health-wise, so perhaps the child hadn't had breakfast or perhaps the child hadn't slept, and you'd be wanting to try and investigate out those things first before you started to investigate whether or not what was happening was due to what was happening in the classroom.
Sure, but in the meantime, while you're conducting your investigations, what are you doing in the classroom? What high-quality practices can you be using as a preventative, proactive approach in the meantime?
As a result of that kind of thought, I was thinking that maybe you could have the children, thinking that it's something to do with the way he walks in, have the whole class do something independent but not challenging, like in quiet reading. And that gives you a chance to check in with everybody. I don't know if that's a tier 1 strategy, but it's something you could do with the whole class.
Actually, I think a wellbeing check is a really great idea. And if you're doing it with everybody, it is a universal. You know, I'm struggling in doing that in an online environment, which is what my little 5-finger activity is at the beginning. I'm just checking in. Is everyone okay? You know, things are stressful right now. So that's a universal practice. So, yep, checking in with students, getting them, it seems from the slide that she's certainly struggling with structured independent work. So if you give her something much more, you know, much more freeform, read a book, draw a picture, that kind of thing. Yep. Did anybody else have any suggestions?
We talked about giving breaks. Given that inappropriate behavior persists during prolonged period of time of independent and tabletop seated work, so providing movement breaks would break that monotony and then would provide the appropriate physical or movement task so that the student would still have the chance to move around, but in a purposeful manner.
Fantastic.
So actually also giving, assigning errands, school-related errands, so that the movement is more purposeful.
Yep, absolutely.
And Kate, given that students started to draw other kids into their behaviour, that they need to have a real focus on whatever their classroom or school-wide expectation might be around learning, around staying in the learning and focusing on your learning, and yeah, as well as providing strategies for when you do need a break from your learning that are perfectly acceptable and no one gives a toss whether you go and have a little break quickly but come on back.
Sure. Sounds good. Bringing it back to those school expectations.
We also spoke about lots of praise. So, you know, if this student does get up and goes to the bin to throw some rubbish out and you know that it's just sort of a thing getting out of work, just saying, oh, you know, I love that you're caring for the school environment and for our class. And I can see that you're headed back to your seat now. Great job. Thank you for helping us with our classroom, keeping it tidy. Great job on getting straight back to your work. Sort of like giving them that choice.
Praising the positive, that's right.
Yeah, and before they've even necessarily made that choice, sort of so that they see that you've seen them and that you're recognising something they've done.
Absolutely. I think you've all done a great job. Anybody else want to offer theirs? Sorry, one of you asked a question before about whether doing something in response to this student made it a tier 2 or 3. Who was that? Can you remind me?
That's
Joycey. Is it clearer now how a tier 1 practice class-wide is not escalating it to tier 2? You're not intervening in a more individualised way?
Yep.
Even though it makes that student benefiting from it.
I am interested in hearing about like more the tier 2 and tier 3 at some point, but I I see what you mean for this activity.
Yeah.
About why that's a universal thing.
This course predominantly focuses on Tier 1. Schools that go down the PBS journey find that it often takes between 2 and 5 years just to get Tier 1 right.
Wow.
Yes. So Tier 1 can't be, if you go into a school and introduce Tier 2 and 3, you're effectively going in and handing out Band-Aids to an issue that can be prevented. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You can prevent most of those issues from arising if you get Tier 1 right.
Okay.
School that I used to work at, Josie, we had 5 years of SWPBS. We had like an audit with some SWPBS body or whoever did it. And after 5 years, they said that we were only 80% on the way there. So even then.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And one
Josie,
of the key words is fidelity. You've got to be doing SWPBIS with fidelity. Otherwise, it's a little bit like an exercise program. If you're kind of doing it sometimes, mostly a bit, you're not getting the benefit.
And Josie, I'm in a special school, so by our very nature, of course, we were doing lots of Tier 2 and Tier 3 interventions, and we still do. But we have to keep harking back to Tier 1, and we're like 5 or 6 years down the track too, and we're due for a big refresher on it.
Wow.
So that's why we focus predominantly on Tier 1 in this course. It never.
It's a bit like a healthy marriage. Have to keep getting back to the basics.
And on that note, I think we all need to go and attend to our families and our partners.
And our stomachs.
Yes, and our stomachs. My tea has gone cold and I may need to replace it. As always, I've enjoyed spending the evening with you. Thank you for coming along and being a part of this evening's discussions. And enjoy your long weekends and please stay safe. And I will see you at the next online meeting. Bye,
Thank you.
everyone.
Have a good Easter, everyone. Bye.
Yes, happy Easter for those who celebrate. Happy Easter.